Nobody believed him. Not his classmates, not his teachers, not even the executives who strutted through the glass doors of Summit Dynamics every morning. To them, David Carter was invisible, just the quiet son of a man who polished their floors at night, a shadow in the corner. But one mistake, one $200 million mistake, would change everything. Because when the company's best and brightest failed, when their million-dollar strategies collapsed, when panic set in, David, the cleaner's kid, solved it in seconds, and what happened next shook the entire company to its core. David grew up in the humblest of places. His father, Thomas Carter, worked nights as a janitor at Summit Dynamics. Every evening he dragged his mop and bucket through the shining halls, cleaning up after people who barely noticed he existed. Sometimes David would tag along, doing homework, in the break room while his dad worked. But homework never held his attention. What fascinated him were the whiteboards left behind after late-night strategy meetings, covered in numbers, formulas, and half-erased equations. Other kids his age were glued to cartoons or video games. David was glued to patterns. He scribbled notes on scraps of paper, copying down equations he didn't yet understand. His dad shook his head. "Son, these numbers aren't for us. We just clean up after them." But David couldn't stop. The numbers spoke to him in a way words never did. At school, teachers dismissed him. When he answered questions too quickly, they accused him of cheating. When he solved problems differently, they told him he was wrong. Even when he was right, he was the cleaner's boy. Nobody expected brilliance. Nobody wanted to see it. By the time he was 14, David had already read college-level books from the public library. He didn't just solve problems, he obsessed over them. Yet still he walked the halls of his school unnoticed, his potential buried under society's prejudice. And then came the chance that would test everything. Summit Dynamics was a fortress of power, one of the biggest tech companies in the city. Their executives were treated like royalty, their innovations covered in magazines. But behind the polished walls, the company had cracks. It started with a miscalculation. At first, it seemed small, just a minor software glitch. But that glitch spread, infecting their systems, halting contracts, delaying shipments. Every day it wasn't fixed cost the company millions. David overheard the whispers while waiting for his father. Employees muttered about panic in the upper floors. Entire departments had been ordered to work overnight shifts. Some said the company was bleeding money so fast it might not recover. Executives with Ivy League degrees tried solution after solution. Consultants were flown in at staggering costs, but nothing worked. David asked his father one night, "What's going on up there?" Thomas sighed. "Nothing you need to worry about, son. Those people are paid to solve problems. That's their job, not ours." But David had already glimpsed the spreadsheets abandoned on glass walls. He recognized the equations, and deep down, he had an idea. Still, he kept quiet. Who would believe him? He was just the cleaner's kid. The crisis exploded. Summit Dynamics announced massive delays. Stockholders threatened lawsuits. Clients demanded refunds. In just weeks, losses skyrocketed to $200 million. In the boardroom, tension boiled. Executives snapped at each other, pointing fingers. Careers were on the line. The company's reputation, years of dominance, teetered on collapse. Meanwhile, Thomas Carter came home each night more defeated than the last. His back ached from cleaning, but it was his spirit that seemed broken. One night he muttered, "They can't fix it, David. If they don't figure it out soon, there won't be a company left to clean." David froze. He replayed the numbers he'd seen on the board. He thought of the formula scribbled in his notebook. And in his mind, he saw the solution. "Dad," he whispered, "I think I know what's wrong." Thomas laughed bitterly. "You? Son, they've got whole teams of experts tearing their hair out. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't embarrass me." But David didn't back down. "Please, just give me one night in that boardroom. Let me try." That night, Thomas reluctantly agreed to bring David along. The boy carried only a notebook, filled with scribbles nobody had ever taken seriously. The office was silent, the city lights glowing outside the glass walls. On the giant screen in the boardroom, the system still flashed error after error, red warnings that mocked the company's so-called brilliance. Thomas muttered, "Son, just don't make a scene. If security sees you messing with this, we'll both be out." David walked slowly to the screen. His heart pounded. His hands trembled. For a moment, he thought about stopping, about going home, about proving everyone right, that he really was just the cleaner's kid. But then he remembered the years of laughter, the teachers who called him delusional, the executives who smirked when he doodled equations on napkins. This was his moment. He grabbed a marker. The squeak echoed through the empty room as he began rewriting formulas across the glass board. One shift, one correction, one pattern realigned. The system froze. Then blinked green. Errors vanished. One after another. The system recalibrated itself, humming back to life. Thomas dropped his mop. He stared at the screen, mouth open. "What did you just do?" David whispered. "I fixed it." Seconds. That's all it took. Seconds to solve a 200 million problem. The next morning, executives arrived expecting another disaster. Instead, the system was flawless. Operations were back online. Reports showed revenue streams flowing again. Panic turned into confusion. Confusion turned into disbelief. "Who fixed this?" one executive barked. No one answered, until a security guard said, "I saw the cleaner's kid in here last night, writing on the board." Laughter erupted. "That's impossible." "The janitor's boy? Don't be ridiculous." But the system logs told the truth. The changes were time-stamped, recorded, under Thomas Carter's late-night access badge, and every fix matched the scribbles left on the board. Silence swept the room. For the first time, they had to face it. The boy they ignored had done what they could not. David and his father were summoned to the top floor, a place Thomas had cleaned for 20 years but never entered as a guest. Inside, the long table of executives waited, suits crisp, faces skeptical. At the head sat CEO Charles Whitmore, a man known for his ruthless precision. He leaned forward. "Explain yourself." David's voice shook at first, but as he walked them through the equations, his confidence grew. He explained why their models had failed, why the error had spread, why they'd missed the obvious. Some executives scoffed. "This is nonsense. He's a child." Others whispered, "But it works." Finally, Whitmore held up a hand. Silence fell. "What you've done is extraordinary," he said slowly. "But tell me, David, why should we believe this wasn't just luck?" David met his gaze. "Because I didn't guess. I understood. I've been studying your numbers for years. Every night while my dad cleaned this building, you all saw a problem. I saw a puzzle. And puzzles are meant to be solved." The room was stunned. Whitmore leaned back, studying the boy. The same CEO who once told Thomas that cleaners stay in the shadows now saw a spark he couldn't deny. Finally, he said, "David, we need minds like yours. I want you on my research team. Not tomorrow. Today." Gasps filled the room. Executives who had mocked David only hours earlier now nodded in agreement. Some even clapped politely, as if they had believed in him all along. Thomas Carter's eyes brimmed with tears. For years, he had been invisible in this building, but today, his son had turned their silence into applause. David didn't just save Summit Dynamics. He shattered an illusion. Because brilliance doesn't wear a suit. It doesn't come stamped on a diploma. It doesn't need permission. It can come from anywhere, even the son of a man who mopped the floors. That day, a $200 million problem was solved. But more importantly, a truth was revealed. Genius has no address, no privilege, no label. The cleaner's son had proved them all wrong. So let me ask you, how many Davids are out there right now? Ignored, underestimated, laughed at. And how much potential has the world already lost because nobody believed? If David's story moved you, leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. Like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Black Response. Because more voices like David's deserve to be heard, and if you haven't already, go watch our previous story. Racist boss fired the wrong worker, but he didn't know what he did. It's just as powerful, and it's waiting for you right now.